Saying that, I'm excited at our keynote speaker. He's someone I've known for a couple of years now. We've had some fun together. Angular is a remarkable product. And who's using Angular out there in the world today? Fantastic. And so it is my good fortune and great pleasure to introduce the leader of the Angular team, not just the spiritual leader, but the physical leader too, Brad Green.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Can we get my slides up? Is that on me? There. Great. I've had the great privilege of being the engineering director in charge of Angular at Google for the last 10 years. It's been an amazing journey here. And by the way, it was amazing to see how many people in the audience are using Angular. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of our community. I want to start by talking a little bit about how Angular got going and make you all a little bit of an insider in our motivations and why we do what we do. When I started at Google, one of the first projects I got to work on was this thing called Gmail. And Gmail was at an interesting inflection point in its history where we had not been able to ship a product for 6 months because we couldn't get a stable build together. And as we dug into it, we found a ton of problems. One of them was we had really low test coverage, right in the 30-ish% range. Not everyone on the team was convinced that we needed to have additional tests. I remember having this heated discussion with the tech lead of Gmail, who was a fine person, by the way. But we got into it, and I remember almost screaming at him that we just need to get in there and write some tests. And after a while, he kind of sat back, and he kind of looked defeated. And he just said, how? So I kind of felt like a jerk because what we realized was it was just infrastructurally difficult to write tests on this project. The code wasn't testable. And this stuck with me. And by the way, Gmail's fine now. We ship every day. This stuck with me as we got into writing Angular, and we thought, well, maybe at the beginning we could give some default structure. We could give things like dependency injection so we could know we could always test the code that we write. And this is why we ended up building this really complete platform with everything that you need so you don't have to worry about the basics. Everything from the core rendering environment to forms and form validation to advanced features like server-side rendering and progressive web apps, all put together in one package that's guaranteed to work together. And this is something that is really unique to the Angular environment, where you won't find it anywhere else. Although other frameworks have analogs to everything that we have in Angular, but none of it is guaranteed to work together as a whole. And that's the thing that we do for you. We also want to make sure that we're completely predictable so that you can come along with us on the journey. Everybody can upgrade to the latest release as we come out. And if you've been with us for a while, you know we actually have this sort of cadence where every year we've got 2 releases. We just went through version 8, where we released on May 28th. And this puts us in about maybe early Q4 for version 9. So you know that we're going to have 2 releases a year, and you can plan for it. We also know that we need to continue evolving because the needs that you have to build your applications, the needs from our users, our expectations continue to change. And so we want to make sure that all of the updates that you ever have to go through are going to be completely frictionless and easy for you to make happen. We have this wonderful site that you can go to, just update.angular.io, that you put in which version you're coming from, which ones you're going to, and we give you some simple instructions on how to get there. The good news is that most of the work that you need to do is actually going to be done by this one simple command, ng-update. And the reason we can do most of the work for you is because at Google, it's our responsibility to actually upgrade all of the hundreds of applications that use Angular at Google. And so we've already done this hundreds of times, and we've seen all of the places that we're going to need to make upgrades, and we put them into this tool so that they can happen for you. Everything that can be automated is automated for you by the time we get to a release. We got some really good validation that we were on the right track, where some of our friends at KLM and Air France built this blog post. They wrote this blog post on how they upgraded their site from Angular 6 to 7 in less than a day, and how they're actually going to do it much faster in Angular 8. So we haven't heard from them yet, but we hope it's good. They care a lot about their development velocity, and they have this really great quote in there. I recommend you read the article. It's linked in my speaker notes, which I'll tweet out right after this. What they said is that, I'll just read it to you. We believe that the best measure of a healthy code base and development team is the time it takes from wanting a change to the time it's developed and deployed in production. Or how well we're doing as a team is the distance between I have an idea and I can get it out there. So they care about this, and so they graphed it for us. And what they saw was that going from version 2 to 4 took them a month, quite a long time. From 4 to 5 and 5 to 6, 2 weeks, but 6 to 7, where we started to have these upgrade tools, just a day. And we're starting to hear the same stories for version 8. Folks like Deutsche Bank in Germany, one of the biggest financial organizations in the world, says, yeah, it took us about a day to upgrade our big banking application suite. We're now on Angular version 8, and I recommend all of you upgrading if you have Angular applications. I want to talk about a few of the things that happen here. One of the things, and if you just remember one thing from version 8, it's that you get smaller apps for free. We ship with this default new feature called differential loading, which is going to make your app smaller for all of your users on modern browsers. And here's how it works. For the modern browsers, like today we've actually been shipping our polyfills to all the browsers. And in modern browsers, we don't need them, or actually we need a very small minimal set. We're also able to ship smaller JavaScript because we can target the modern syntax for the transpilation. And then for the older browsers, for people who can't upgrade, we have the full polyfill and the today's larger ES5 syntax. The great news about this, though, is it doesn't require any work on your part, and there's no server config change. This happens all on the client, and you just get it for free. How big is it going to be? Well, on our Angular.io site, we saved about 41K. There's a fixed amount of savings you're going to get from the polyfill, and then there's a variable amount depending on how big your application is. So you may see some differences. Typically, we're seeing between 7 to 20% savings. This is great. Nothing to do except move to Angular 8. You get smaller apps that load faster. We've also given you a really powerful addition to change how the Angular CLI works. In version 6, we gave you the ability to use schematics to modify how the templates work and how the code gets generated. And in version 8, we're giving you the ability to orchestrate the tooling to how you want it for your own applications. And so now you can change how we do building, testing, linting. In this version, we're actually taking advantage of it to give you an option for how you build the software, where we're going to offer Google's build system called Basil as something that you can use. We're also working with a number of our partners to offer deployment right from the Angular CLI. We actually have versions that work for Azure, Firebase, and Zeit now. And it works like this. It's so simple. You just add the package through ng-add. You say you want to build for production, and then you run with the deploy command. You're going to be asked to log in to whichever site you're on, but it's going to be really easy to deploy right there from the CLI and the command line. We have a ton of other features that have come with version 8 as well. One, we've added the ability to move some of your code into a web worker right from the CLI. We're actually doing this on the Angular.io site because we've got a in-the-browser indexing job that runs so that you can search through the Angular docs content even if you're offline. We've moved that to a web worker, and what this means is that process can no longer ever cause a pause on your main UI thread. So you can take advantage of multiple cores on your user's machine to make sure that they've got a really smooth experience. We've made a ton of improvements to service workers and added many flexibility features so that you can have a better time implementing what you're building if you're trying to achieve a progressive web application. We've moved to a standard for lazy loading. So we want to do lazy loading so that just the JavaScript that's required for that first view of the application comes down when the user asks for the application, and that the rest of it can load later. Early on, when we started to do this lazy loading, there was no standard for doing it. So we built our own string-based syntax, and we actually had to build plugins for Webpack and Rollup and all of the other tools that do code splitting. Moving to the standard of import, it's gonna mean that any tool that wants to do code splitting, any tool that you wanna use is automatically gonna know how to code split your Angular application without having to wait for a plugin. The other good news is there's a free tool for making the upgrades automatically. And it's, again, in the link in the speaker's notes. We're improving the way we do metadata output so that the IDE that you use can do much better completions. You can get much more accuracy there. And if you're migrating from an older AngularJS, Angular 1.0 application, we've actually made it much easier because you can now have the Angular router take over all of the functionality because we've built a compatibility mode for the $ location service in AngularJS. And now the Angular router can take over all of that. You can have a single router, they don't have to fight with each other. For folks who are just getting started, if you've got other people at your organization that need to get going with Angular, we've simplified the getting started guide so it's much easier, much simpler to get going. There's a couple other features that I'll talk about later that are in a preview, in a beta, and these are Basil for build and Ivy for rendering. We'll get to those at somewhere near the end of the presentation here. If you haven't upgraded to version 8, it's time. It's the stable release. It's very easy. Just go to update.angular.io for your instructions, and then all the docs are at the latest now at angular.io/docs. I want to spend a bit of time talking about our community here because it's super important to us. And this is why we're here at the conference this week. This is why we build our software in the open source. It wouldn't be much without all of you. And to show off this, I'm gonna do something I've never done before. It's a little scary for me. I wanna do a magic trick on stage. But I need some of your help. I need a couple folks who can come up, and I'm just gonna pick folks, if you don't mind. And if I could, so gentleman in the back row here with the glasses on, could you come up to the stage? Yes, please, come on up. I'm gonna get 10 folks. Can the lady in the polo shirt here, yes, would you mind coming up on stage? Let's give these folks some round of applause. Sir, in the striped shirt right here, would you come up on stage, please? Yes, thank you. Yes. The lady in the baseball cap, would you please come on stage here? Sir, right here on the end, yes, come on up. Back down here on the end, are you available, sir? Can you come up on stage? Yes, thank you. Let's give these folks some clapping. The woman in the back row right there, can you come up on stage with the sunglasses on your head? Yes, yes, please come. Give her a round of applause. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 3 more. Let's see some hands. Who wants to come up and join us? Right here, way back there, and then one there. Yes, sir. Thank you. Come on up. One more round of applause for these folks. Okay, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna give all of you a notepad and a pen. All right, grab, 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 yes. Grab, yes. Okay, we know how this works now. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, wonderful, great. Okay, good, good. Ooh, ooh, okay, here we go, here we go. Lovely. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I'm gonna want you to write down 3 things. So open it to a blank page. At the top, can you please write down your favorite coding snack? For me, it might be Twinkies. But you choose your favorite coding snack, right at the top. Could be pretzels, could be whatever. You can surprise me. In the middle, can you write down your favorite IDE? And at the bottom, write the name of the model of your first computer. Ah, first computer. A lot of fondness there. I see smiles. All right, when you're done, tear your sheet off. Don't let me see it. Fold it so that your written words are inside, and just fold it like this, just one time. I want them to all look the same, like this. And come put them in the box for me. Just put them right in here. Come on up. Yeah, you can put your pens and the pads on the table. Good, good, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys want to do some magic? Yeah, let's find out. I got a question for all of you on stage here. Is one of you kind of good at mental telepathy? Which one of you is the best? That guy? Actually, I see a good smile right here. Would you be my assistant on this? Yes? Okay. Everyone else, please sit down. Please give them a big round of applause. I'm going to give you a mic. What's your name?
Carla.
Carla. Thank you for coming on stage. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to step back. I want you to, here, I'm going to spin this around. I want you to open the box. You can open the flap on this side. There's a little Velcro tab. Okay, if you open it up and you pull that towards you, could you, without looking, just pull one out? Just one. And here, so I can't see it, put it on the other side of this book. Yes, and I'm going to guess what these things are. Okay, can you read what's on there, please? Don't tell me. I'm going to try and get some mental waves from you. We'll see if this works. So can you read the writing on that? By the way, it's not yours, is it? If it's yours, just put it back.
It's not mine.
It's not yours, okay. All right, so first is the snack, right?
Sure.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you, is it a salty snack?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Do you know what the snack is? Yes, obviously yes. Is it, I feel like, can you taste that for me? Can you just imagine eating it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is it a cheesy snack?
Yes.
Ah, like my fingers would get orange if I ate it?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it Doritos?
No.
Am I close?
I kind of, yeah.
Okay, what is it? Sorry.
Cheetos.
Sometimes this happens.
Yeah.
Cheetos. Okay, so I missed the first one.
Yeah.
Obviously my fault. You were the great mentalist because I saw the smile on your face. I know that this is going to happen. Okay, second one, is this your IDE that you use?
Yes.
It is. Oh, okay, so imagine you're using this so I can kind of get the feel from you.
All right.
Okay. Try again.
Okay.
Ah, okay. Is it VS Code?
Yes.
Okay. Good guess, right? Okay. On the last one, okay, so I'm gonna make it harder on myself. I'm gonna actually write it down before you tell me anything. I just want you to focus on what this is. Do you know what the computer is? Never heard of it.
No.
Okay, this is gonna be harder then. Okay, wait, I think that doesn't seem right. Is that it?
No.
Is this the model number maybe?
It doesn't have a number.
Doesn't have a number.
It's a word.
It's a word. Oh, okay, hold on. I gave you a book. Can you open that book to page maybe 116?
Sure.
Can you go down to line 9, word 2?
Oh my goodness. You got it.
What is it?
Commodore Amiga.
Whoa, good job. Let's give a hand for this great mental telepathy expert. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, one more round of applause. Thank you. All right, why did I do this? Except it's fun. The Angular community for us makes it magical. Because if I go up on stage and I do this trick by myself and I stuff a bunch of ballots in the box, it's kind of a crap trick, right? But together, this becomes a magical experience. And that's what it is like for us on the Angular team when we get to work with all of you. We love doing this. And the reason that we do Angular as an open source project is because we get to work with everybody in the outside world. That's what makes it magical for us. We've actually done Angular as an open source project since the very beginning, since before anybody thought we should be doing open source at Google so much. And we actually do it in a way that I think is more open source than a lot of projects. Because we develop Angular not inside Google and then push it out. We actually develop out on GitHub and pull it in. And so we take the head branch on GitHub, we sync it into our repository at Google, which is called Google 3, or just G3 for short. We run all the tests against hundreds of apps, and this is hundreds of thousands of test targets. And only then, once we get it all passing against all of those applications, we mark it as this can be released. This means a couple things. Number one, you're guaranteed that it's gone through a ton of testing before it ever reaches you as a final release product. And number two is it means that everybody has an equal opportunity to see what's going on in Angular and contribute. This is really important to us. This allows us to do two things. One is we get the best ideas from Google, and we get to put them on the outside world, and we also get to do the opposite. We've got some examples here where I mentioned before that we're starting to bring our development and build system to the outside world. We're bringing Basil from inside of Google to the outside in this release. But we also do the opposite. We have this wonderful relationship with the Microsoft TypeScript team that we started from the beginning of Angular version 2, and we built the two together. It's been a wonderful experience, helping everybody have a much better developer experience in the world of JavaScript than we were able to before. You might be familiar with Angular Universal, where you can do server-side rendering and get that first page to load incredibly quickly for your users, even on crappy networks. This was originally an open source project that we on the Angular team adopted and maintained from here on out. And then even in our latest release in version 8, our renderer that we're putting so much effort behind was actually pitched by some of our partners at Amadeus, this company in France. They not only pitched it to us, but they dedicated several of their engineers to help us build it, and it's now finally seeing the light of day in version 8. What I call the Angular team is made up of 43 truly amazing folks. Some of these people are full-time paid people at Google. Some of them are contract developers. And some of them are just contributors at companies that sponsor them to do this work with us. We're broken up into a couple groups, as you might imagine. We have the framework team, tooling, that builds the CLI. We have the components team that builds the component dev kit and the Angular material elements. But then we have some cross-cutting groups for documentation and developer relations as well. We're organized in a way where we really wanted Googlers not to have a special role here, but they do. And because there's two things one thing they can only do and one thing they must do. The thing that only they can do is run those tests against the hundreds of Google applications. The thing that they must do is actually review all the code that's coming in to make sure that it has all the security and privacy and everything that we want baked into the software. But beyond that, the set of collaborators that we work with outside of Google have exactly the same abilities to affect our roadmap, to build design docs and collaborate with us in our weekly meetings. And then we have this much larger group of folks, maybe a lot of you, who help by submitting pull requests and submitting issues. This is wonderful. It's worked well for a long, long time. We have a little bit of a problem, though, is that we keep growing, and rather quickly. As a matter of fact, in 2018, the traffic to our doc site at angular.io grew more than 50% to over 1.5 million developers coming there every month, which is wonderful. It's a great problem to have. But what this means is that we can't scale, and so we want to make a change. We're going to now expand the group of folks that we are able to collaborate with so that we can do a better job. And so we're going to go from a model like this, where we have just one core set of close collaborators, to having a new set that we're going to onboard that can eventually become that core set. We've got a couple goals here. Number one is that we want to be able to scale more, be able to handle more of the issues, more of the pull requests, and really engage with more passionate folks who want to make Angular great. We also want to increase the diversity of the folks who work on Angular. We've got time set aside to take people from novice all the way through to Angular experts and collaborators on this team. We want to create more opportunities for people who have great ideas to get them into the Angular platform, and then really, in turn, mutual long-term success. It's great for us because we get new ideas, and we think it's great for our collaborators too, at least this is what they tell us, because they get to know so much more about the inner workings of Angular. There's kind of two flavors of folks that we see joining. Number one is just normal folks who have passion for this, and they want to turn this into changes to Angular to make it better. And the other segment is like folks on our partners at Amadeus who helped us with Ivy and so many other things, where there's an enterprise who want to sponsor some of their developers to work on Angular. And in turn, they get really deep in-house expertise on Angular and more ability to affect our roadmap. Just this year already, we've onboarded 9 new community members, and some of them, like Manfred and Jai Li, have been instrumental in building the features in Angular version 8. We want to do this for 40 more folks here in 2019. I want to make a point that this is actually for more than just adding code to Angular or changing code, but there's many, many needs in documentation, training support, design, and UX research, and some of these are often easier places to get started with, to learn Angular's code flow process, how we manage our releases, before you get into some of the bigger, deeper technical issues. If you want to join as an individual contributor, just contribute. Because we have to interact with everybody who's making contributions to Angular. We're going to find folks who are doing a great job, and this is how we found those 9 contributors so far. If you're an enterprise, email us. There's links for both of these in the speaker's notes, and you'll see my slide deck link at the end. There's actually a special feel to the Angular community, and we're so happy about it. But instead of me talking through it, there's a wonderful video that interviews some folks and gets their take on what it's like. And let me just play you a short segment from it.
What makes Angular community so special?
Yeah, I like the character of the community. Everyone is very passionate about what they're doing.
The people.
Yeah, I know that's everyone says, but it's because it's absolutely true. The people is what makes this technology amazing.
The focus on not just the technology, but the people and like making people feel welcome.
There's so many people doing it, you can kind of bond over it.
It's very helpful. Whenever I have questions, I go to the Jitter and ask questions, and I do. Generally, within 15-20 minutes, I get an answer. So I'm not stuck anywhere. So that's the one of the best thing about Angular community.
The sense of community, being able to talk to anyone and everyone, and everyone's approachable and friendly. I think that's been my most exciting part, is just being able to connect and talk with people. Meeting people who are just really involved in the community. We have maybe 5 or 6 Angular teams at my work, but just being around so many people that have so much expertise in different areas is really cool to be a part of.
Okay. We actually work to make this happen. It doesn't happen for free. There's a lot of people in the community who work to make it amazing. But I want to tell you a story about maybe how we can think about this. A couple years ago, I'm in the kitchen making dinner. And my daughter, who was 4 at the time, comes in and she has this burning question for me. She says, Daddy, when you were a kid, did you pick your nose? And so I was kind of conflicted, because on one hand, I want to tell her the truth, but on the other hand, I want to set her up for success in life. And so I kind of went middle of the road, and I said, okay, baby, yes, as a kid, probably I did pick my nose, but I've learned, it's better to use a tissue so you don't get a cold and you don't offend people with picking your nose in public. And she went on, and I said, well, Daddy, when you were a kid and picked your nose, did you eat your boogers? Again, I was conflicted. And I said, okay, yeah, baby, when I was a kid and picked my nose, I probably did eat my boogers, but I've learned use a tissue, and that's what I want you to do. And she went on, she says, Daddy, do you want to see me eat my boogers? I was like, baby, tissue. It's a funny story, but the reason I'm telling you this story is because what she was asking was, what's the right way for me to behave in the world? What's the right way for me to interact with other folks? And in the Angular community, we start with a deep level of empathy and respect, and that's what we ask of everybody here at this conference, everyone who interacts with us on GitHub, everyone who interacts with anyone else in the Angular community. But I think it goes beyond this. That's the base level. But on top of this, imagine you come into the Angular community, imagine if the opposite happened. Imagine that because of your gender, or because you're asking new questions, or your race, or whatever reason, you got made to feel not so great. But imagine the opposite, that as you come in, you're welcomed and you're helped to grow, no matter who you are, no matter what your background, no matter how newbie your question is. And then as you grow in expertise and influence and connection to the community, you can help welcome that next set of folks. And that's what we want. And that's what makes it magic for us. All right, a couple more things. The future of Angular has always been helping you scale more. And I've got a graph where I want to show kind of what we're trying to do, where the types of apps that are easy to build with Angular are going to fall somewhere along the scale, where we go from small apps like demos and one-offs and really small things that we need at our companies, to enterprise apps, where we have thousands of users, but generally giant code bases. And then billion user apps, maybe slightly smaller code bases, but really high performance requirements. And here in the AngularJS days, Angular version 1, we hit this sweet spot of small demo apps were so easy to do, all the way up to kind of medium-ish enterprise apps. So that when we went from Angular 1 to 2, our goal was this, that we would just expand out into the greater set of enterprise apps and in towards the big sets of user apps. Where we kind of hit, though, is a little bit more towards enterprise apps. But as we've built out Angulars 4 through 8, we've made it easier and easier to hit both ends of the spectrum. And as we're headed towards Angular in version 9 with Ivy, our intention is to go much broader, where it's much easier to build high-performance apps and small apps with things like Angular Elements, where I can build tiny portions that are released by themselves. We want to go further than this. And we've got some good hope that we can, because we've recently become the partner for another team inside Google. And this is another web framework team that you probably have never heard of. It's called BachWeb. There's no reason, because it's internal only. But BachWeb is used by our biggest high user apps, things like web search, Gmail, Photos, all of the big multi-billion user apps. And we've started to build prototypes with them of what it would look like on Angular with all of Angular's ease of use features with these high performance requirements. And we call this Angular Photon. You're going to be hearing more about this from us later this year. But our goal is that we can really cover the entire spectrum of applications any company would need, from our big enterprise apps all the way through to the public-facing front ends. Here's how we're going to do it. Number one, we want to expand our ability to scale builds with Basil. And the reason we're doing this is because the complexity has shifted for us, where when we started on the web, all of the complexity was handled on the server, where we were writing in C# or Java or whatever, And that was fine, though, because our build tools and our other tools in those environments were very robust, and they can handle scale to big, big teams. But as the complexity has moved into the world of JavaScript, the tools haven't really come along necessarily. And so this is why we want to take the build system we've been using at Google for over 10 years and release it outside, because we think we can solve a bunch of these problems. Number one benefit that I want to get from Basil outside might be faster incremental build and tests. Because one of the features of Basil is that it can know that for one input, which outputs need to be affected, so that when I make a small change to my code, I can have a very short compilation time. They should be proportional. So no matter how big my code base gets, I should have ability to have really fast turnaround time as a developer. It's also full stack, meaning I can build my front end and back end together. I can test them together in my automated CI, and I can guarantee that they're going to work for my users. I don't have to do a big manual test of them together. Whether I'm on C# or Java or Go or Python or whatever, we have build environments for the back end as well as the front end and TypeScript. You can build and release together. It also allows me to scale on the cloud. Move that build out from my developer desktop into as many machines as I want on the cloud and run in parallel. And this can be a big benefit for performance. We have a bunch of users. The biggest one, of course, is Google. We've been using this for over 10 years. Our challenge to get it out there was to make it work for non-Google environments. And we're starting to see some folks adopt. We have a set of folks at this company called Lucidchart. Maybe you've used it. It's a web-based charting environment. They build with Angular on the front end and Scala on the back end. And now they're able to build a single release where we build and test at the same time and guarantee that everything works together. LogicOcean is a startup in China where they're starting to see improved build times because they use Basil for all of their build environments, both front end and back end. And then Angular, we've actually moved all of our builds onto Basil as well. Because if you remember the slide from the beginning, we have this rich suite of different products that we need to build and test together. That's been instrumental for us. We moved our CI from a single machine into what's called the remote build environment, RBE. This is just building in the cloud. And we went from a CI that took, on average, 60 minutes down to 7.5 minutes. This really helped us be able to do big turns on the software, test, and make new releases much, much faster than we could before. Basil now runs as part of the Angular CLI. There's still some rough edges, and so that's why we're calling it beta. But you can try it out today. And if some of these benefits sound good to you, we'd actually love to work with you. You can find out more information at basil.angular.io. Also in the speaker's notes. Last thing I'm going to talk about is the Ivy renderer. We've been investing in Ivy in our new renderer for over a year now. And in version 8, this is the first time where you can start working with it. We had a bunch of goals for Ivy. Number one is we want to make it smaller, and not just a little bit smaller, but much smaller, so that you only get in your initial bundle the features that you use. We want to have much faster compilation, and so that, like with Basil, you can get the small code change equals a small recompile time. Much simpler debugging. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Improved type checking. There's some parts of our templates that we can't do type checking for you on right now, but in Ivy we will. The most important thing, the most important feature that we're making in Ivy, though, is that it's backwards compatible. And in version 8, this is the thing that we focused most on, and we want your feedback on this. If you want to try it, it's not, well, maybe it's hard. Yeah, it's not hard at all. For a new application, you can just say ng-new and give it the enable Ivy flag. If you've got an existing application and want to try it out, there's a few more steps. It's not bad. You can just go to angular.io/guide/Ivy. Inside Google, you remember we test all of our changes to Angular before we release to you. We're very close to flipping the switch to moving all of the hundreds of apps that use Angular inside Google over to Ivy. We're actually at a 90% passing rate for unit integration and screenshot tests. And again, this is across hundreds of thousands of tests. So we're pretty confident that for a large number of you, it's actually gonna work great. It's actually gonna work just fine. But there's a couple cases where it might not work so well. And those cases are where we haven't seen the dependencies that you have for your application. So if you use a lot of libraries that we don't use at Google, there's gonna be things that we need to fix, and we want your feedback on that. And if you have very few dependencies, we think you're actually gonna be able to use Ivy just fine. You're gonna get not our full goals met, but let me tell you what you will get. Number one is you do get simplified debugging, and this is pretty cool because now in Ivy, if I turn it on, I can actually set breakpoints in my HTML and have it stop there in the debugger. I can also get a stack trace that is easy to understand. Because in Angular today, we have this interpreted mode where what you get is a stack trace of our interpreter. And in Ivy, what you're gonna get are some very simple instructions that you can read and understand what's going on in your change detection. Our goal was to be smaller, and in today's renderer that we call View Engine, in Angular version 8, you would get, for Hello World, you get a 151K build. This is before compression. The default you're gonna get with the differential loading is 131K. But then if you turn on Ivy in this compatibility mode that we have created, it's down to 126K, but then with differential loading, you would get down to 109. So already we're starting to see some good savings. For everyone, of course, we recommend View Engine with the differential serving. That's gonna be the perfectly safe option. For some folks, we would love you to help us test, and for some of you, we know you're just gonna be able to run with Ivy at this smaller deployment size. I did say we want to get dramatically smaller. We have had Ivy working at a very small size for a long time. What we're doing is building it out to make sure that it's completely compatible with all of your applications. There's an undocumented API in Angular version 8 where you can get a build, it's about 14K. Again, that's before compression. It's very small. And this is great for if I'm releasing something with Angular Elements as a web component where I want to have a very small build for just a small part of my application, or that initial load can be very small as well. It's an undocumented API. I've seen some people out on Twitter who have figured it out. If you're a thrill seeker, maybe try it out and let me know how it goes. But our goal is that something this size is what you're all gonna get close to version 9. We have some other bonuses that we didn't know we were gonna achieve. Number one is we are seeing lower memory requirements in our application test suites. For the framework, for the application simulation, it's 30% less, and then for material design tests, our UI suite, it's significantly lower, about 90% lower. And they run faster. Again, about 38 and 80% respectively. Because this was a complete rewrite, we fixed a ton of bugs. We fixed things like change detection running too often, class bindings overriding other ones, a lot of things that may be annoying you for several versions that were just hard for us to fix in View Engine are now fixed in Ivy. You can go enjoy those. And so what we get in version 8 are a bunch of our goals met, and some things that we didn't plan on being met as well. Towards version 9, we're gonna get all of those other benefits where we get to that much smaller build size, we get to faster compilation and improved type checking. So then, as we look towards version 9, what we're planning on is that Ivy becomes from an option to the default. And that Basil goes from, hey, it's got some rough edges, to it's fully complete and fully compatible with the way we do things today. We're pretty excited about it. That's all I have. Here are my slides. Here's the link to me on Twitter. Thank you so much.